I mean, it just makes practice that much easier, that much better. Just go out there, do what we got to do, focus on the job that you got to do, and do it at full speed, do it at however you need to do during practice so you can go out and replicate it on game day on Sunday.
Yeah. Gronk's become the best blocking tight end in football. You're not going to get much vertically from him, but man, can he block. Can he block?
You know, Gronk's had kind of a rough year as far as the coverage goes. Everyone keeps calling it the end of his career, and, you know, he's deteriorated, and he's not the same player, and he doesn't have impact and stuff. I would watch Gronk, especially this weekend. I mean, I do think he's going to be back next year, first of all, and I think he's going to – I mean, he still demands respect when he's out on the field. And in a game like this where it's cold, he's still hard to get down. Yeah. He's going to be a factor this weekend. Yeah. I know everyone's sold out on Gronk.
By the way, the Patriots are healthy and the Rams are healthy. The two underdogs this weekend are the healthier teams. And so just remember that. By the way, we'll make our pick top of the hour. Joy with the news.
Well, that's the news.
And thanks for stopping by.
The Herd Live
Three-time
News.
National Sports Writer of the Year, NBCSports.com. Let's bring him in on a Friday. Peter King via the Cowher Global Satellite Network. You know, Peter, this weekend you've got legends, Breeze, and legends, Brady. And then you have, you know, the MVP and the next big star, Mahomes. And Jared Goff has been marginalized to just a guy. I would make the argument that year 3 of Tom Brady's career, there were a lot of similarities to Goff. California, 6'4", little thin, very coachable, absolute grinder, kind of a legendary growing head coach. You know, I think people forget, Peter, you were around. Brady today isn't Brady 15 years ago. Go back to Tom when he broke into the league. I'd argue he looked a lot like Goff.
Well, he certainly didn't have the weaponry that Goff has. And yeah, Colin, he was still becoming a really good quarterback, but the gigantic difference is that Goff in year 1 was highly questionable. Brady in year 1 won a Super Bowl. And Brady in year 3 won a Super Bowl. If you don't count Brady's rookie year when he didn't play. But I think the future is very bright for Goff. He's gone from being a guy who everybody was wondering if he was going to be the B word, the bust, you know, after his first year with the Jeff Fisher staff. But, you know, from the minute that Sean McVay got in there, McVay was going to mold him and craft him. And I think he's done a great job. And, hey, look, Goff has, as much as in the last, say, 6 weeks, Goff has had some really shaky moments. His game against the Eagles was ugly. But I will say this. He's made some throws this year. You go back to the Thursday game against the Minnesota Vikings. Yep. He made 2 throws that Dan Marino would say those are some all-time throws. So I'm bullish on Goff. I think he's going to be very good.
Listen, the Rams are interesting because, you know, people say it's a copycat league. They did a couple of things that were very unique. They refused to play any of their best players a snap in the preseason. They've had lighter practices. They rested Todd Gurley for 3 weeks. Literally, they went late into the season, get a C.J. Anderson. And I have this feeling and they went into big free agency with some guys with reputations that weren't great, Talib and Ndamukong Suh, Marcus Peters, that if it's a copycat league like everybody claims, Peter, if the Rams win, we've already seen in the coaching hires, people are looking at the Rams and McVay to duplicate that. I kind of feel like between the Eagles and the Rams, Peter, they both went big into free agency. And if the Rams win this weekend like the Eagles, that used to be kind of a no-no. People rolled their eyes at non-prudent spending. I kind of feel like if the Rams win, there's going to be a little change in free agency. Am I reaching there?
Well, the last time a team did as much as the Rams did, both in trade and free agency in an offseason, you know, a contending team, was the Eagles when they had the Dream Team. And that obviously was a huge bust. But this team, you know, and clearly when you trade for veteran guys, you know, it has the potential to bust. But for the most part, it's worked for this team this year. The one interesting thing I think about the Rams is how Todd Gurley has gone from being a top 3 and maybe top 1 back in the NFL to being a little bit hurt. And now he might be, I'm not saying he is, he might be in a job share with a guy who was on the street 5 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And who had been cut this year by 3 teams with losing records, Denver, Carolina, and Oakland. And now, just wind him up and throw him out there, and he rushes for 125 yards. What guy in history, I'd love to know the answer to this question, has come onto a playoff team who's going to have a bye in the first round of the playoffs, who's walked into this playoff team from the street, from his couch, and 3 weeks in a row gained over 125 yards on the ground? It's unheard of.
And finally, in the NFC, your gut feeling tells you who's winning that game. Your gut feeling.
My gut feeling tells me New Orleans, but I'll tell you, when you lose your best front seven interior player in Sheldon Rankins, Dennis Allen has got to have a good plan for what has been a really, really good running game of the Rams. Because the Rams, look, everybody thinks that Sean McVay is some master, fill the air with footballs guy, but I think he might try to run it down the Saints' throat, in part because the Saints' defense is a lesser defense without Rankins, and in part as an attempt to try to take the crowd out of this game. Colin, I've covered the NFL for 35 years. I can't say that I've ever heard a crowd louder than when I was in the stadium in the Superdome last week. They're down 14-0 to Philadelphia, and that crowd is still almost at full throat the next time the Eagles touch the ball. So I think that could be an issue for the Rams.
That's why the Saints are favored. Let's move over to the AFC. I think Chris Jones, if he becomes a problem to block for the Patriots, will know it very early. In all 5 of the Patriots' road losses, they didn't lead any of them in the first quarter. In fact, trailed in 4 of 5. Generally, they're not out-schemed. There's a physical component they don't match up against. They didn't match up with Tennessee's defensive front. They didn't have Josh Gordon. They struggled against the Steelers. So when they've struggled on the road, you've noticed it very early. It's not like they've blown leads. So I kind of think Chris Jones will have a major impact. If they have to double him and it stalls the running game, Tom's in trouble. Who do you think plays a crucial role for the Chiefs or Patriots this weekend?
Justin Houston. Remember, in week 6, when the Patriots and Chiefs played, the Patriots put up 43 points, went up and down the field, 500 total yards or whatever it was. And what I really remember about that game is that Brady had a lot of time. And to me, Justin Houston, he wrecked Andrew Luck in the second half of that game last week.
Yep.
So when you've got Dee Ford here, Justin Houston here, Chris Jones in the middle, that's really, really tough to handle. And to me, Josh McDaniels' biggest challenge is keeping Tom Brady relatively clean, so he's going to have enough time. But just remember this. I say that about those 3 guys, but I think the Chiefs are going to have something up their sleeve so that James White doesn't wreck the defensive game plan. Because just look, last week, 15 catches. James White has been a gigantic force for the Patriots in all their recent playoff games. So the Patriots lean on him when they desperately need an outlet back out of the backfield.
By the way, it's hard enough to win on the road. Patrick Mahomes is the league MVP. I've been told he's your MVP choice. Go back to your 30 years covering the NFL. People have compared him to Favre. Do you feel like, remember, before Favre, there was no Favre. I don't know who they were comparing Favre to. But I hear Favre with Mahomes, and I see some of it. Is that the prototype for you?
He is Favre. That's what he's going to play like. And look, I think the one difference between them is that Favre was a wild and uncontrollable colt in his first 2 or 3 years, to the point where I think it was year 3 that Mike Holmgren, Steve Mariucci, Andy Reid, the entire offensive staff in Green Bay sat in a meeting one Monday after a desultory Packers loss that Favre played relatively out of control. and Mike Holmgren took a vote as to who should be the starting quarterback. I think it was either Favre or Ty Detmer. Now, Favre won, but it wasn't unanimous. They don't have the same issue with Patrick Mahomes. He does what Andy Reid tells him to do,
right?
As opposed to Favre necessarily all the time doing what Holmgren told him to do. But they do play a lot alike. And I think he's only played 18 games. We're already fitting him for a gold jacket. But the only guy who reminds me this early in his career of a guy you say, man, this guy looks like he's going to be an incredible superstar for a long time. I got to go back to Dan Marino. And that's the one who Mahomes, just his impact incredibly early, reminds me of.
By the way, it sounds like you're leaning Kansas City.
Now, I'm leaning New England, but believe me, if I were a gambler, I would take a leash and I would tie it around my belt and I'd put a lock on it and I would forbid myself from going to the local wherever you go to gamble, or I'd put a lock on my phone so I couldn't call my bookie, because that's potentially, in my opinion, I think it is ridiculous to bet on the Patriots and Chiefs. I wouldn't bet the over, wouldn't bet the under, wouldn't bet the Chiefs, wouldn't bet New England. I just think it's a totally unpredictable game.
Peter King, 3-time Sports Writer of the Year, NBCSports.com. Read his stuff. We will. Have a fun weekend, Peter.
Thank you, Colin.
Great stuff. Dontrell Inman. No, but Peter doesn't think it's a lock.
How do you feel about that? You've already bet the games, haven't you?
Well, no. One of them I feel is the lock of the year. By the way, did they move the Patriot-Kansas City game?
No.
Because I'm reading the weather forecast. It's 33 degrees.
You know what? On behalf of all the weather people in Kansas City, all of the meteorologists, I apologize. On behalf of all the meteorologists in Kansas City, thank you for giving us the accurate weather forecast, as opposed to sticking with, I said it's going to be an Arctic blast, and I'm sticking to it.
50-degree swing in 2 days.
That's what the weather does, Colin. It changes. That's what meteorologists do. They follow the weather change and then inform us.
Couldn't see those clouds coming a couple days ago? All right. Brady is the great manipulator, and so is Belichick.